Guyana, land of many waters with 6 races living together.
Globespan is a Guyanese dialogue moving towards the realization of one nation in one Guyana. It's a platform that offers an all-inclusive discussion, with the pros, the cons, the ones that is taken aside, and the ones that stand in the middle. Globespan believes agreeing and disagreeing are part of the nation's building. Globespan believes that every Guyanese voice is part of the nation's building. As we span the globe for voices from the diasporas and those living home, we stand on our commitment that we are all Guyanese working towards one nation in one Guyana.
Coffee and Dr. Jagan, Bobby, she gave us our great sons. Rohan Kanhai, Coffee and Dr. Jagan.
As the world turns on its axis bringing changes, we as Guyanese must adopt to those changes for a better Guyana for all. Globespan stands on its axis with its belief that one nation, one Guyana, one destiny must include voices from all corners of Guyana.
Land of many waters with 6 races living together.
Good evening to all our listeners and viewers around the world, and welcome to Globespan Television. This program, let me remind you, has been made available by Mr. Noir Singh and our technical directors, Mr. Ryan Gobin and Mr. Devin Bissoon. Tonight we have with us Dr. Mark Light for the second time in 6 weeks because of the teacher's strike. But before we get to that, I want to tell all of you, we can be heard on YouTube and Facebook. So tune in, get into Facebook, and you can pick us up from there. And I also want to tell all our listeners and our viewers around the world that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not reflect those of the staff and management of Globespan Television. So again, welcome to Globespan, and yesterday was Mother's Day. A special welcome and to all the mothers who celebrated Mother's Day yesterday. So, Dr. Light, it's a pleasure having you in the program once again in 6 weeks. I think the last time we had you here. Welcome to Globespan Television.
Thank you, Dr. Rose, and your viewing audience. A pleasant good night to all of you from wherever you are viewing this telecast from us here in Guyana. And I also want to wish the mothers around the world a belated Mother's Day, and there were different ways in which mothers were celebrated in Guyana here. And it's a big day on Mother's Day. So, yeah, happy to be here and to contribute to this program.
Thank you very much, Dr. Light. Now, you're here under peculiar circumstances because we're having a second teacher strike in 6 weeks, twice for this year. Never happened before in Guyana. Now, 6 weeks ago, you called a strike. It lasted for over a month, or just about a month. You called it off. Why?
Yeah, 6 weeks ago, the strike started in the month of February, the 5th of February to be precise. And on the 4th of March, the strike was officially called off through the court-mediated process for resumption and resumption of talks. As you are aware that there were no good faith negotiations coming from the administration in Guyana here, the government in particular, because when we enter into that agreement to resume talks, one would have expected that we'd have had good faith engagement where the government would come with a counter proposal or come to meaningfully discuss the issue that led us to a place of strike in the first instance. That did not happen. In fact, we met with the government side through the Ministry of Education on the 7th of March, and we had inked an arrangement as to how we will go forward, setting out a chronological order and the period for which these negotiations will take place. Lo and behold, on the 12th, our second meeting, the government changed its composition of team and came with a position that they cannot negotiate the period for which we have submitted our proposal, but are willing to negotiate for 2024 and onwards, a proposal that we never submitted in the first instance. So, having given the court an opportunity to adjudicate on our particular matter that we said with the cutting of salaries and the remittance of dues, 3 weeks after that ruling came about, we are back outside again because there has been no engagement between that period from the government side until the union signaled its intention that strike action will resume on the 9th of May. Of course, we are on strike at this present moment since the 9th of May. Today would have been the 4th day of the strike action.
So, because of the court intervention, I know the court intervened and saying that the teachers, the days the strike, no money should be deducted from their pay. And also the government will have to deduct the union dues on behalf of the union. Is those two things happening still?
We have just seen only one of them, I should say. There's not been no movement on the government side to remit the dues for the months given the ruling of the court. We have not seen the cutting of salaries, but no remittance of dues. And that is a direct breach of the ruling given by the High Court under Judge Stanley.
So what's your plans? You plan to go back to the court?
Well, obviously, it's a matter for the contempt of court, because once the court has given a ruling and you don't abide or comply with the ruling of the court, that's an issue for contempt. So our lawyers are presently addressing that, and we await the outcome in that regard.
Okay. But the court is not involved in any way this time for the strike?
No, the strike is predominantly about non-engagement, and the fact that the government has declared through the Ministry of Education that they are not interested in our multi-year proposal and the period for which we have submitted our proposal. And we have the Minister of Labor on record as saying that the strike is illegal after the court ruled up late last week, talking about they cannot pay for the period under which they were not in power. Absolute rubbish. And that is the same ministry that is now asked to facilitate the process of conciliation. And as a union, we feel, that there's this grouping against the workers of this country, not to, first of all, comply with a government, with a court order, and secondly, not to give the working class people an opportunity to survive given the high cost of living here in Guyana. So the stuff continues to pile against us, and the only way that we can stand against the powers that be is to be on strike. And even while we are on strike, there's this interest in when the strike will end without coming to the table to tell us what we needed to hear for that resumption to take place.
Okay, now you called the strike last Thursday, I think was May 9th. Did you receive a mandate from the teachers? And if so, how much support you're getting for the strike? Because you called it off before, and then it started to get people to go back and strike again. But it seems to me that the teachers are supporting you. So how much support are you getting from the teachers?
Yes, the strike started last week, 9th and 10th. We were at home. Those were 2 school days. And today we came out to coupled strike with ticket action. And so while we would not have seen the teachers out on the 9th, we recorded last week over 60% of our teachers supported the strike action. The call for strike by withholding their service. The numbers for today are still being accommodated, still being added up, sorry. And so that number will be made public shortly, but we recognize that more teachers supported the cause today. Because the rationale last week, while we only had 60% or so, was because many of them felt that they needed to complete the week. You know, the strike was called towards the end of the week. So they felt they needed to complete the week and that they would have started today, Monday. And we have seen those numbers go up. So it's much more significant today.
Okay. Many, including your own trade union leaders, what I read, are calling you, have called you a very brave person to take on the government. My question to you is this: do you think you're brave?
I think I'm fulfilling my duty as a union leader, and the teachers would have elected me to represent their interests. And it takes a lot of bravery to take on national duties, whether it's the presidency of a country or the presidency of a union or a leader of a company. You have to be brave. You have to be able to go out there. And as you know, good leaders are ready to take the risk. So I would say, given the mandate I have, I am only executing that mandate. And many who would not venture into doing what I have done will see that as bravery. But I see myself as being a leader doing what I'm elected to do.
You said that 60% of the teachers are on strike, and as time goes by, more will join the picket line or more will go out and strike. Now, how long before you are prepared to call the strike off?
Well, at this moment, as you know, the teachers' strike was ruled as legitimate, and the judge would have pronounced on it. So once there's a legitimate cause, there should be no haste to call the strike off, providing that the government is willing to come to the table and talk to us, and not only talk, but also to do so meaningfully. We have not seen the effort on their part, so this strike may go on as long for as long as it's required.
I saw a report which says that the teachers in Ghana are the lowest paid among Caribbean teachers. And I also saw the same report mentioned that based on the salary scale some of the teachers are getting, 34% of teachers in Guyana are on the poverty line. Now, I don't know how to measure the poverty line, but what percentage of the teachers are earning below $100,000 a month? Do you know?
A significant number, because one would have to take where the bulk of the teachers are stuck. They are stuck up at the level of a TQM, which we call a temporary qualified, a TUM, acting teachers for the hinterland, pupil teachers. I think we just have a few of those. So the majority of our teachers are the ones who are now starting. Some of them are in college, so they are barely having between $90,000 to $94,000 monthly. And it is quite accurate when the report indicated that 34%, because if you're living in a Guyanese context and you are earning $90,000, then you obviously cannot survive, because in an instance where you're paying $50,000 or so, or a minimum of $50,000 in rent, a minimum of your light bill of about $10,000 to $15,000, your phone bill about $6,000, a food bill of about 30,000 to 40,000, and I'm being very, very kind with these numbers here. You already see that we've superseded that 90,000. So yes, many of our teachers are living below the poverty line, because while they work in a secular noble profession, they are not given the kind of remuneration that will allow them to live at a particular standard. So I would agree with the revelation in that the numbers that were given, that indeed believe even more than 34% of our teachers are living below the poverty line. And we are seeing many of them are actually doing odd jobs to make ends meet. They are having work with the working security guards at night and teaching during the day.
The report also said that 39% of the teachers in Guyana are doing two jobs.
Right.
So how can you teach and then do a second job?
A lot of them are doing taxi service, like they work their cars after school. They work all through the night. So yes, how can those teachers give their best in the classroom, when they have to be out at night, hustling, as we would say here in Guyana, um, just to make ends meet to feed their families and teach for another 5 to 6 hours is just not possible. So, indeed, there is a dire need for a livable salary to be given to our teachers, and that is all the union has been asking. That is all, as the leader of the union, have been saying all these months and years, that government needs to do better in addressing the salary for teachers, the majority of whom are just surviving.
Yeah, I saw that report. It said teachers in Ghana earning one-third less than teachers in the Caribbean. So what should be the livable salary, the starting salary for teachers, do you think? You put
I
it in
think the
numbers.
minimum a starting teacher should get is just around 230,000 would be a good start, because if you're earning that amount, you'll be able to pay your bills, you'll be able to eat well, you'll be able to have some level of savings, you'll be able to focus on getting a home for yourself, you'll be able to send your children to school. So all of that would be possible, and there would be no need for a second job, doing lessons after school, or driving a taxi, or selling in the market, or doing a security guard job. So I think a minimum of 230,000 for the startup teachers would be adequate.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Teachers are supposed to be preparing lessons for the next day, what they'll be teaching on. And if these teachers are having two jobs, so when they leave teaching, they go and do a second job, do they prepare lessons? And it should be the headmaster, headmistress for each school to see the teachers' lessons on the following day?
Yes, the teachers are required to prepare lesson plans. Right now, we have an attempt being made to do weekly lesson plans rather than the daily lesson plan. So that will cut across, helping teachers not to be planning every night. But prior to this year, teachers have been planning lessons every day. So every night you do lessons for the number of subjects you have the next day. And that took up a lot of time. And so we found that many teachers, because of the fact that they were not prepared, schools would have them being written for not preparing to work, and the stuff like that. So yeah, it is a challenge. If you're not earning enough, you have to be working. And when do you get the time to prepare? And so many teachers would have, been in confrontation with their school managers because they have no lesson plan to submit when it was daily lesson plan, simply because they don't have the time to prepare the lesson. And also, what we found as well is that when this was happening, some teachers use their entire Sunday. They sit Sunday all day and they plan all their lesson plans for the week, right? So the daily lesson plan for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they sit and plan all of them. So they can go off on their hustle Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and even Saturday they can be in the marketplace selling vegetables and fruits and pastries and cool down to make ends meet, right? So again, teachers would have found the ways in which they can plan their lessons. Like I said, all day Sunday they sit and plan for the week.
But do these classes do have exams, and they don't take the exams home to grade them?
Well, we consider teaching to be a 24-hour task. So yes, there's a lot of instances where teachers take homework to grade, or they sit around in school after school hours to grade those test papers or assignments. But you'd have to know that exams are written not all year round. So there are periods when the teachers will buckle down and mark the scripts, right? There are other instances they will give themselves time to mark assignments, stuff like that. So I would say that they do mark papers, but they will do so whenever there are exams in progress.
Okay. Now, what exams are pending for the students now, common entrance and so forth, and how the strike would affect them?
Well, right now, the Caribbean Examination Council is running off the CXC CSEC exam. and where you have the grade 11 children writing the CXE, call it here. So they write their normal mathematics, English, social studies, science, biology, chemistry, and so on. And then we have the children who are in the upper grade, which would be the 12th form, 12th and 13th grade. They actually have what we call Cape Caribbean Advanced Examination,
Right.
right? So those are in progress right now. And so many of the schools are having children just going to write exams. So while we may see children go to school, those are the ones who are taking exam as per timetable issued by the CXC. Other examinations that are coming up, I want to say that this is the promotion term. This is the final term of this academic year. So students are expected to write a promotional exam to advance to the next grade. And we have students from grades 1 right up to grade 10 would have to write that promotional exam to move from the grade they're presently in to the next grade. If a child is in grade 1, he or she has to write an end of year and a term exam, which is a summative assessment, to move to the next grade, which would be grade 2. And that goes on for all the other grades. So that is being affected right now. And there's a process where teachers have to prepare the exam questions, prepare the marking scheme, the table of specification. They would have to then administer the exam because there's no invigilator to do that. Those scripts would then have to be marked. The children will be graded now, and then they're given their report booklets to indicate whether they are moving to a particular class or not. We also have our grade 9 children who are then going to be streamed. We call it a streaming assessment. And that takes a lot of consultation with the parents and the child deciding on a career path. Those children are going to be placed in a particular grade, whether the science class is, or the art class, or the business class, depending on their career path. So there's a lot of consultation that is expected to take place between the child, the parent, the teacher. That is being affected. So those children would not be able to get that kind of guidance, and the parents would not be able to get that kind of guidance because the teachers are not at work. Then we have the children who are crossing over from what we call the nursery schools. Nursery has 2 levels, year 1 and year 2. The nursery children in year 2 are then going to move to primary school. Then they enter what we call grade 1. So that transition process will be affected. And then there's another intake coming from children who are 3 years old, now entering into the nursery school. So all those processes are being affected by this strike. And the longer the strike goes on, the more affected the lives of these children will be. It has implications for children's career choices. It has implications for their change of grade, going to a new school, from one school to the next, like the nursery to the primary, or going from a home or a play school to a nursery school. All of those processes. Also, teachers are not at work, so they're not preparing assessments, marking schemes, they're not doing table of specification, they're not going to be able to grade the assessment, they're not going to do mark books. So, so promotion is affected. And we have just about 7 weeks remaining. Maybe 4 of those weeks will be taken, 3 of those weeks will be taken to actually administer the exam. So right now, teachers should be completing their test scripts, getting them passed through the various channels at school, and the requisite approval, the printing of those papers. So all of that is affected across Ghana, right?
What about common entrance?
Well, the common entrance children are awaiting their results. The grade 6 assessment was completed, and the marking process should have commenced today, I believe. So that is on the way. Those children will actually go to school, and the teachers will prepare them for the transition to secondary school. That transition process will take place. The teachers are not there, so that they themselves also are being affected. The kids.
So the strike is affecting the students. Now, let me play the devil's advocate. Is this fair to the students?
That's a question you asked on all the occasions that have been here. And I want to say we have to ask ourselves, is it fair to the teachers? And let me just put into context the fact that You asked the question when we were on strike for 5 weeks. The teachers went back to school. They fully prepared the children for the grade six. The ministry did not have to extend the examination date because the teachers went back and they completed the work. The same for CSEC. SBAs were affected at that time. The teachers went back. The ministry did not request from CXC to have an extension for submission of SBAs. Teachers went back, they completed the SBAs, they marked them, they submitted the scores, they prepared the children. So I think our teachers have done human service, and they have been doing so. But our employer isn't conscious of our contribution and continue to treat us as though we don't exist. Every other category of worker, their needs are addressed. And I give you a typical example. I live in the quarantine area, and I saw one day the Kanji sugar workers came out and they protested for that 1 week or 2 week pay that was promised. They came out for a few hours, we never saw them again. And you can assume that they were paid because they were never out again. So there are some categories of workers that are treated in a certain way. And that has got to change because without teachers, we can't have any of those other categories. Another thing, on May Day, the GAHU union leader, who is also a parliamentarian, went so far to say in 2023, he signed 12 collective agreements. 12. When other unions like the PSU, the GTU, and the other unions are struggling to sign one. He is boasting about signing 12. So we have to examine these. Why is there a reluctance to have a collective agreement signed with certain categories of workers and some it's a free pass? And that is the question all Guyanese seem to be asking. What is wrong with us? Why can't we have the same kind of treatment? And we don't want to hear how other governments treated who. This is a new era. Guyana has the resources. Why treat our teachers the way that we are being treated? Why treat the public servants the way we are treated? And this has got to change. Government has got to look at this in a more critical way, and they've got to come off of their high horses and address the needs of the working class people to create every other profession in this land and around the world.
Let me ask you this question. Why do you think there's a reluctance on the part of the government? As you said, they're addressing GAWU workers, but they're not addressing the problems with GAWU workers, but they're not addressing the teachers, the public service, and so forth. Why do you think there's a reluctance? What is the reluctance, do you think?
Well, there are different narratives that are out there. Some people believe because of the composition of the workforces. Some people believe because there's a stronger political support coming from a certain union and group of workers. Some people just believe that it's a matter of political grounds, regarding a political ground, that in the instance for the Guyana Teachers Union, that if you give in to our demands, then it will prove the government weak and submitting to the wishes of another political party. So there are different narratives out there. But I want to say that I don't have the stats on them, so I'm just repeating the narratives that are out there. But I believe that all workers, irrespective of whether a large percentage support you or not, should be treated equally. And when governments take the reign through an electoral process, you have your support base elect you. You take a position to lead for all the people, irrespective of how you perceive they are politically aligned. And I believe also this government has a golden opportunity to show to the Guyanese people that we do care for everyone, irrespective of the sectors you operate in, because the wheels of this country can only turn when all the workers make their contributions equally. The sugar workers make their contributions, and we have no grouse about sugar workers because we've always seen how hard they work. The teachers work very hard, and we must recognize their contribution. The public servants, the clerks in the various offices, they do the same. And so everybody has got to be given a fair share of the pie. And government has a chance to win the hearts of people who you perceive don't support you. by giving them a livable salary and livable wage. And this opportunity is being squandered all because of old politics, old style of politics. This is a different, if I use the word loosely, a different dispensation. And people have a way of recording. You know, there was a time when we would have said stuff and it's forgotten. Now people go back in the archive of social media, they bring up what you said then and what you're saying now and prove you not to be genuine and credible. And those information are before us, the kind of videos and saying that are before us. And you know, government has to be more responsible, have to be more caring, not only say we're caring, but show we're caring. Look how long the teachers have been asking. And your guarded position is we can't go back because that was APNU time. Now, we're not here talking about APNU. We're here talking about the PPP that is now in government that took the reign to lead Guyana into a prosperous place. And we hold them accountable. What APNU did not do, this government has to do it. And we believe they have the capacity to do it. They have the know-how. And if they give in to the wishes of the working class people, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of love and care that will take us all as Guyanese forward and make the ruling party being loved by everyone if you give them what they need. That's all that will come out of it.
If I'm hearing you correct, there's some political favoritism, political bias among the trade unions. Some are being favored, others are not favored. But the question I have to ask you is this. You are asking for retroactive bargaining from 2021, 2022, and 2023. And that's not within APNU's time.
No, it's not. But I heard the labor minister saying, well, we can't give payment during when we were not in government. We have submitted a proposal as a continuation from the last agreement. The last agreement ended in 2018, and it's only fair that we submitted a proposal for the period 2019, which is a 5-year span. We've always done. And whenever governments negotiate, they go back. When APNU negotiated with us in 2018, they went back to 2016. And that is not to say that is because they were in power then, but that is when the agreement should have resumed. And we are not seeing the same kind of effort being put forward in this instance. Some folks are holding their ground to say, no, we can't do this because we are not responsible. The government has to come to say, look, we want to negotiate. This is what you propose. This is our counter proposal. Here's our counter proposal. They have not done that. They have come with a position and a bullying position to say, we don't care what you put forward in your proposal. We are only ready to talk from 2024 and onward. That is trying to bully the union and to shortchange the working class people of this country.
Now, so what years are you putting forward for renegotiation? 2019, from 2019 to 2023, and then 2024.
Dr. Rose, it's called negotiation. So our proposal speaks to 2019, 2020. We can't speak to anything we didn't submit. We have not submitted a proposal for 2024. So how can we talk about 2024? The union hasn't put forward anything for that. And so the union has made it very clear. What is before you is what we would like to talk about. And that is where we're having the deadlock. Government saying we can't do this, and the union said this is what we have done. And this is how it has been done for all our proposals that we have submitted, all our agreements. There's always been a retroactive period. We have more resources now, so I don't see why we can't do it. We've done it when we hadn't oil. Why can't we do it when we have oil?
I read it in this evening papers, a late edition from Stabrook News, that the Ministry of Education have written to the Ministry of Labor asking for mediation. Have you heard anything about that?
Yes, they reached out to us. And that's the funny part, you know. The union wrote for mediation or conciliation, in November, I think it was October 2023. The chief labor officer did not facilitate the process. We wrote for arbitration. He did not facilitate the process. The ministry wrote him yesterday, the 12th of May. He was ready to facilitate the process. Invited us to a meeting, and as a good union who want to see these things amended, we went to the meeting today. But there has been no outcome. The same position obtained. All they're interested in is the resumption of work for teachers. Call up the strike, call up the strike. We're not calling up the strike unless we're given the assurance that they mean business and want to engage us meaningfully on the proposal we submitted. The strike will go on unless they're going to meet those terms.
So you all are meeting today?
And we had a meeting today. All day we were in meeting since 10:30. We never completed that meeting until 4 something. And the main issue here is the period that the negotiation should be centered on. Why should there be a debate on the period when all the union submitted was a proposal for a particular span of years? Why is the government holding out 2024? We never submitted, and the arbitration, the conciliation process can never be on anything else than what was submitted. So I don't know what the chief labor officer wants to conciliate about.
So is there a meeting planned for any future date?
Well, we go back tomorrow because we were hammering out some issues, and tomorrow we go back. But I don't know what will be the outcome, because if both parties continue to hold their position, then we're not likely to arrive at an amicable solution.
Okay. I think it was in 2018, you called a strike against APNU. And I think that strike went on for what, 2 weeks? Was it for the same reason?
9 days, yeah. It was the same reason, because APNU at that time, the then government, they were saying that they cannot negotiate retroactively. And we went on strike. The strike lasted 9 days. And then it ended with in an amicable way, with a commitment from the then government that they're going to negotiate. And the period for which they're going to negotiate was based on the submitted proposal. And we agree on the terms of resumption, and everything went well.
So APNU did give you retroactive?
Yes, APNU, that agreement was signed in 2018, and the teachers got retroactive payments from 2015. 2015, okay. 16, 17, 18, 5 years.
Oh, okay, that's good. Now, it's the second time you're calling a strike for this year. Are you getting support from your other fellow union leaders?
Well, we have not gotten any physical support. All we're hearing is that those unions who have similar challenge, because their unions would have submitted proposals and they got the same kind of treatment, that they are now mobilizing their members. So this is likely to take on a countrywide flavor. So we're not likely only to see teachers not working, but we also likely to see members of the public service, members of the postal service coming out to join us, right? Because they are similarly affected. Same way they are affected. So this is likely to escalate, and that is why I'm saying the sooner the government treats with this matter, the better for us as a country. We are not seeing that kind of commitment to deal with it. APNU dealt with it when they were in power, and we move along nicely. Why can this government deal with it in the way it should be dealt with? And again, I reiterate, we are having more resources now than that last government had during their period. So what is the issue?
Now, let me say this. If this government will negotiate with you going back to those years and give you a reasonable amount of a percentage, don't you think the other unions will want to go on strike to get the same thing like what you have?
I would say that each union has its own proposals that I haven't seen the proposal for the other unions, so I can't say they're going to be asking for the same thing. We have asked for different things. Some unions, they just ask for a percentage increase Other unions ask for salary, which is a percentage, and other non-salary benefits. So I have not seen them, so I can't pronounce on whether they will want or whether they want to join. But I'm hearing that as an argument. Oh, if we give the teachers, we'll have to give all other sectors. And I'm saying that all workers of this country deserve a salary increase and not an imposition. What we've had is an imposition with each passing year. Since this government is in power, all we've had is imposition. And the laws of this country stipulate that there must be collective bargaining. The government has a civic and a constitutional responsibility to engage the leadership of those unions and negotiate based on what those unions would have submitted. I can only speak for GTU on what we have submitted, and we hold government responsible to negotiate with us through a collective bargaining process, because that is an opportunity for them to move according to the constitution of this country and not to impose salaries as they have done.
Now, what are the parents saying? Are they supporting the strike?
But it's already days, but we've recognized now that since we've been doing a lot of education of our parents, they are now, standing in solidarity with the union. We had a meeting last evening that was general, and a set of parents who are on the call with us, and they were saying we would like to join the protest, and we would want the union to put us in a separate section of the protest, so that when the media highlights, they see we are not teachers, but we are parents standing in solidarity with the teachers because our children are affected. A lot of parents would have reached out to us saying they are finding it difficult. Their children can't go to school. They now have to figure out options to have their children get to stay with a relative, or to pay additional fees for daycare services. Those are the kind of things coming, and I believe the parents are going to come out in larger numbers as the days roll on.
I think I read some time back that the Ministry of Education has announced that it has given allowances to teachers. What is that allowance all about? Can you explain to our listeners?
Well, allowance in this instance refer to about 4,000 teachers who are given allowances for degrees that they have, additional qualification. We have about 16,000 something teachers. So what government did is that they gave an allowance of either $10,000, $6,000, 20,000, or 30,000, depending on the kind of qualification you have. And this is based on the most I would say the highest qualifications. If you have a bachelor's degree, you get 10,000 as an allowance to your salary, which is taxed at the end of the period too. So the 10,000 allowance is then added to your gross and taxed, right? If you have a diploma, you get 6,000. Again, that is added to your salary and then taxed. If you have a master's degree, you get 20,000. It's added to your salary and then taxed. If you have a doctoral degree or a PhD, you get $30,000 added to your salary and then tax. Now, our bone of contention, it's a good initiative. We've been asking for that. Additional qualification must be recognized. So this serves as a motivation to the members of the teaching fraternity to always seek to upgrade themselves. However, it is only addressing about 4,000 teachers. If you have 16,000 teachers and as a union, what happened to the other 8,000 teachers? They are not receiving any allowance because they are at the bottom of the scale. They're either at the Certificate College of Education, they now started the profession, or they're at the university trying to get a degree. So a salary increase across the board will not only benefit those who are receiving allowances, but it will benefit all the members of the teaching fraternity, whether you are now starting, whether you're at college, whether you are at the university, or you are already qualified with degrees. All of those persons would be getting an increase. And so, as a responsible union, we see that as a fairer system to ensure that everyone gets a piece of the pie, not only those who have qualification. Yes, those who have qualification, we get an additional, but what happens to the teacher who is now starting or the one at college, So that is something we have pointed out to the Ministry of Education, and we pointed out, on our social media platform. But I don't believe it has fallen on any fertile ground. It seems as though it has fallen on deaf ear. And the rationale we have given is to say, when you're talking about boosting people's salary, then you have to think about everyone in the profession.
Now, and there's other allowance which is given to teachers, like to purchase small things for the school, for the classes. Is that something that is given to teachers? Allowance is given to teachers to purchase.
Not allowance, it's a school grant. Not allowance. Allowance is what you have for yourself. This is a school grant that has to be spent either on your classroom or on the subject area that you're teaching. So what obtained in some education districts is that the regional democratic council would buy, whether the school need bleach, they need cardboard, they need markers, they need chalk, the region will buy. And we've been complaining that there is a lot of wholesale purchase with substandard material. So you collect the marker, it doesn't write, right? You collect cardboards that are very poor quality. So we've been pushing that each school must be given a grant so that the schools can actually buy what they need. That is what the government has done, and we appreciate that because teachers are now able to indicate to their school what is it they need, kind of marker they need, the kind of cardboard they need, kind of learning aids that they need to help them, the kind of materials, whether you're doing maths and what you need. In some instances, we bought things like calculators and geometry sets for the mathematics children so that they have access. So poor children going to school can have access to these things. So this is not an allowance to any teacher. The teachers are involved in the process of indicating what they need to buy. In some instances, some of them will spend the money, produce the receipts to the school, and then that is cleared with the Department of Education, right? So it is not a grant. It's not an allowance. It is a grant given to the school that is then utilized to enhance purchase of learning materials and to help with class preparation.
Now, the union is calling for an increase across the board for teachers. I'm not going to peg at what percentage, but don't you think there should be a graduated increase? Let's say those at the lower level or the lower brackets should get more, and those at the higher level should get less?
Well, all of that would come out through a negotiation process. But if you are not prepared to be part of the negotiation, then we can't get to that stage where government can put forward that argument. Now, our less qualified teachers, we don't give them the same percentage as qualified. Now, that can be ironed out over the negotiations process. But if you're not prepared to even start the negotiation, we can't get there. The union is open to all of that. And like I said, that is why it's called negotiation, because even though we propose something, it's not something that has to be agreed on. We can reason and talk about it and come up with a more plausible way of rewarding our members and recognizing their efforts and so forth. So the fact that there hasn't been a commencement of the negotiation, we can't get to talk about that. But it's a good suggestion. I know it has surfaced before. Rather than use an across-the-board figure, it can then be given according to categories as well. So that can be entertained, but as again, there's no talk on it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Georgetown is expensive to live, more than in the rural areas of the country. But I was told by some people that it's more expensive to be a teacher in the rural areas, let's say in Lethem and in Mabaruma and those areas, than in Georgetown. Which is which? Is Georgia
It
more
is more
expensive to live?
expensive. It is more expensive. Georgetown is expensive in itself than compared to like Berbice or Essequibo, let's say Region 2 on the coastline. But once you go into the hinterland riverine areas, things are much more expensive. For example, teachers are paying $18,000 for a bottle of gas, a 20-pound cylinder of gas. They are paying 500 and more dollars, 1,500 I should say, for a pound of chicken. A pound of chicken is just about $500 in Georgetown. A bottle of gas is about 4,500 in Georgetown. But when you go into the hinterland, like the Upper Mazaruni area in Region 1, Mabaruma, Maruka, Matakai, in Kato, and those other areas, you have to pay a larger sum. So it's much more expensive to live in the riverine and the hinterland areas to get some basic commodities. Even a bottle of water that we buy for $100 is about $600 to $700 in some of those places. So it's a lot more costly to live in those areas.
Do you think the strike is having any impact on the government?
Well, judging from the reaction of government, I don't know whether it's having any impact, because if the government was really concerned in a deep way for our children, this is how you're asking if it's fair to the children, I believe they would have been running to come for us to solve this problem. The government watched us for 29 days and did absolutely nothing. So judging from that reaction in the previous strike, I don't even think it's really affecting them, because I did mention that many of the children of government officials, starting from ministers and permanent secretaries and other top officials, their children are attending the national schools where teachers hardly strike, and also their children are attending private schools. So their children are not affected. It is the people from the lower classes, poor families, who can just send a child to the nearest school. Those are the children that are suffering. And I believe that if government really care about the people, because the poor class of people are suffering, teachers who are poor and the children who are poor, they will jump to have this matter resolved as early as possible. And let us get into the negotiation phase so that we can meet each other at a point and agree and move forward.
Now, have you ever checked to see what teachers are making in the private schools with the same level of qualifications and the same years of teaching? Is there a big difference between the teachers in private schools and the teachers in public schools?
In the first instance, the private schools don't have a lot of trained teachers. So these have persons who probably just left school, or they just have a university degree and they went off to teaching. So the private schools in many instances would have mostly students who are teachers who are not as qualified. Not that they're not qualified, they're not as qualified as public school teachers. That's one. Secondly, in regards to the salary, they are paid much more depending on the school to which they're teaching. A private school teacher might be taking home, a starting teacher might be taking home upwards to $150,000, right? And not somebody who just left school and went to teach at the private school, given that kind of salary. So they are motivated based on the salary they receive. And I guess if you go there with more qualification, your service will be in great demand and you'll be paid much higher. So yes, they are paid a better salary in the private school.
So I say that to find out, I don't know if you have done it or you looked at it, are your teachers in the public sector leaving to go to teach in the private schools? Is there been a cast off in that area?
So we don't have a lot of that happening, because Teachers in the public schools are concerned about their benefits. If you're working in a private school, you're not likely to have the same end benefit as a teacher in the public school. So those are some considerations persons would would look at, and they make the decision to remain in the public school. But what I do know is that come September, we are likely to lose thousands of teachers. Thousands of teachers will leave the shores of Guyana like our nurses have left to go to greener pastures. Just the other day, a UK firm is recruiting presently teachers with a bachelor's degree and 2 years experience. And I believe we have more than 60% of our teachers with that kind of qualification, at least a bachelor's degree. And they're going to leave to go to the UK. Many of them have gone to the United States. So I see a mass exodus and a serious brain drain from September of 2024. And government must pay attention to that because you cannot replace the experienced teachers who are likely to leave.
Dr. Light, you are in a situation where you're fighting for the union and so forth, and I understand that. But what corrective measures are being taken to protect teachers who are on strike? Because sometimes there could be vindictive actions against some teachers.
Well, we have we have our legal persons with us, persons from the legal fraternity, and the instances where teachers are victimized, those matters are reported, and we prepare to take the necessary legal action in the event there are cases of victimization, like transfers and persons not being promoted because they were on strike. We haven't seen those happening, but we are on the lookout for it. Some of our members have indicated to us that they suspected that they're being targeted. But we are asking them to gather the kind of evidence that will give us the kind of the case that we need to prove in a court of law, because no teacher should be victimized because of the position they take. So we've not had anybody coming forward with concrete evidence, but there are some reports where persons suspect that because they were on strike, they're being targeted, and we continue to look out for them. We have assured our teachers we have their backs and we have their interests at heart. And anyone who tries to step on our teachers and because of the position that's taken during the strike, we will represent them to the fullest.
How are teachers being promoted? You have headmaster, headmistresses, then you have seniors, senior headmaster, senior mistress, and below that, what you have?
Well, you have, like you said, headmasters, deputies, senior masters, mistresses, head of departments. Those are the major 4 areas where teachers are promoted in. Teachers can be upgraded to seniors without a promotion, having served a certain amount of years in the profession, having being trained for 6 years. You can apply for what we call a senior position, senior mistress or master's position, but you are not being promoted. You got an application and you have a little bit of an increment or 2 added to your salary. So the promotion basically will be for 4 positions: head, deputy, senior masters, mistresses, and head of department.
No, but the process is through the ministry, or there's a commission to promote teachers?
We have 2 systems. We have some schools that are board schools, and the Ministry of Education, under the arms of the Minister of Education, controls what we call a school board secretariat that promotes teachers who are attached to board schools. And we have spoken out, even in our proposal here, that there's need for board schools to be scrapped because of the kind of things we've seen happening under the board school system. But the neutral way would be through the Teaching Service Commission for schools that are not managed by boards. And we have asked that board schools go back to the Teaching Service Commission because by law, Teaching Service Commission is the body that is responsible for promotion, employment, discipline, and transfers for teachers. We have asked that in every proposal we presented because we have seen a lot of teachers suffer at the hand of boards, and we still continue to put that as an area for concern and that we want the government to address. So to answer your question, there are two ways in which a teacher can be promoted through the Teaching Service Commission or the School Board Secretary.
I got a question here from you. Someone asked me, what is the board school? Does that still exist in Guyana?
Yes.
What is the board school?
The board schools are schools, I think we have about 30 something of 38 of them, where the board schools are managed by a board. And I believe it is something that was intended to be copied from what exists in the North American society, where you have a board and they're given a subvention to run the school, to manage the school. In this instance, you have a board.
Oh, those are magnet schools. Those are magnet schools in the States. Okay.
Without subvention, making decisions, people making decisions who don't understand education. Maybe they are lawyers, they are businessmen or women. And so that is how the board is, they comprise the board of these affluent persons in society who don't necessarily have the time to go to board meetings, don't understand the school system. And so a lot of board schools have boards that are dysfunctional, have boards that really don't carry out their mandate because they just don't know. And of course, they can't implement anything because they don't have resources. They're not given a subvention to manage themselves. It's still controlled by the state.
And are those board school teachers on strike too?
Yes, some of them. Yeah, in some instances, because we have members in the board school. So in some instances, board members, board school teachers are on strike as well.
The first time I'm hearing about board school. Is there any board school of the quarantine?
Yeah, we have the Tagore Memorial Secondary and New Amsterdam Secondary, and in New Amsterdam Technical Institute. So in Region 6, there are 3 of them. Region 5, I think we have Rossignol Secondary, and there's a technical institute in Maikoni. I think those are the 2 board schools in Region 5. But we have a lot of them in
those are run by boards.
All the national schools are board schools. Queen's College, St. Joseph, St. Stanislaus, St. Roses, the Bishop. These are all board schools. All the national schools.
They're run by a body.
Yeah. Well, they call them a board, a body of people selected with a particular interest.
But your union represents all those schools, the teachers from all those schools.
Yes, we represent teachers from all those schools.
The question I want to ask you, though, are headmasters or headmistresses allowed to go on strike?
Yes, definitely. I'm a headmaster or principal of a school. I'm on strike. Several of my exec members. So there are procedures to be followed when you go on strike. You turn your keys over to the regional department, and they will do what's necessary. So yes, head teachers can go on strike.
Well, I didn't know. I did not know that. But the next question then is that when a headmaster or headmistress go on strike and you turn the keys over, someone from the region will come and open up the school and let the teachers go and which teachers want to go and teach.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They open the school
so
and
these teachers will be teaching. So they'll be teaching without any supervision.
Yes, that happened.
Wow.
So that is why in many instances there's nothing really going on at school. School doors are open. a few children go to school and a few teachers, and they just go for a few hours and go back home. And they do nothing. If the teachers are unsupervised, they just sit around under the name that they are at work and not on strike. So that is what has been happening.
Let me ask this question again. If the government refuses to negotiate for those retroactive years, you're saying the strike will continue. Are you going to continue to get the support of the teachers? I know they're not losing money from their pay. That matter is supposed to be appealed. I don't think it's been appealed as yet.
Yes,
so
the strike will continue.
And are you going to get the support from the teachers?
Well, the teachers are the ones who have asked us through their representatives and through individual consultation that this is what we need to do. And so they are fully in support of our action.
And the kids are left stranded because of a conflict between the government and the union. Now, which is not fair to the students, but I understand where you're coming from, and I can understand where the government is coming from as well. But why is it so hard for them to have an arbitration to negotiate something? Put it to the arbitrator and let them negotiate to see what is what. Are you going to be bound by arbitration? The results of an arbitration?
We're open to that. We're open to arbitration. If that is what government wants to do, we are ready for that. But again, the two sides would have to agree mutually for the process to be taken to arbitration.
To select an arbitrator.
Yeah, the two sides would have to agree first that there is need for arbitration, and then you go about selecting the arbitrator or arbitrators.
And even the arbitrator come and say no increase in salaries for you guys. What happens?
Once you accept an arbitrator and the process of arbitration, then you are bound by the outcome of the arbitration process.
Dr. Light, my next question to you is this. Going on strike at this crucial time when kids have to have promotional exams and so forth to go into new classes and new schools and so forth. What are the parents saying about that?
Like I said, the parents are pretty upset for the most part, but a lot of them are not venting that frustration out in the general public. And we believe that the administration needs to hear those parents because their children are affected. And like I said, children from the lower classes in our society are the ones who are majorly affected. So I believe parents need to raise their voices and, hold their administration, the government accountable, because this is not just a GTU thing. And every time the union takes a position on a bread and butter matter, we are always told, and maybe it's meant to cause us to feel guilty. What about the children? But nobody considers the teachers. A teacher lost his life this morning. Matter of fact, 2 teachers lost their life on the Linden Highway. And from some of the reports I got, the teacher was heading to work in Linden, but before he went to work, he was trying to get a hustle. That's the report I got. I'm unconfirmed, but a lot of teachers do the taxi service, right? And
that's in Long Creek where the accident occurred.
Right. A lot of these matters, teachers, you're going to work, you pick up a load so that you can cover your gas because your normal salary can't cover you driving to work. So teachers do these things, and then when you hear people lose their lives on it, it's really hard. 2 teachers at once. And another one I learned is critical. So these are the realities. And so when we're talking about fairness to the children, we also have to be cognizant of the fairness of the teachers to the teachers too, because teachers have need, they have children. How are they sending their children to school if they don't have the resources?
But the strike is having a major impact on the students because based on what you're telling us here, is that this is a time in the next 5, 6, 7 weeks are for promotional examinations to be taken. And if a student don't write the promotional exam, what happens? The student will go to the next class without knowing the results of that promotional exam, or the student will stay in the same class.
But the system has to decide on that. We have laid out as a union what are the consequences of us not being in the classroom. And we believe our employer has a clear understanding of what those consequences are. And they have a national responsibility to address the concerns of the educators. We are not out here one time, we are out here for the second time. And the reason why we're out here for the second time on strike is because the administration has refused to treat with the concerns of teachers. And that is what must be the issue before us. Why is the administration reluctant to deal with the issue affecting teachers? If it is affecting our children so badly, and we care and love children, why can't we address it? So I don't blame the teachers and the educators of Guyana for taking a stand. It has been too long. We have waited for the last 4 years. 4 years we've waited, given enough time, and we are asked to wait until 2027. That is really unreasonable.
So without the teachers back in the classroom, there will be no promotional exams for kids to move on to different grades or different standards or whatever it is.
Well, maybe the government will send in their teachers and the part-time staff to teach the children and do the job, but our teachers would not be there, and maybe our employer will figure out a way how that can be done. But I believe good sense ought to prevail, and we've been saying this all along. Good sense must prevail, not from one side, but from both sides. The union has always said we're willing to talk. Imagine they reached out to us yesterday evening, and we were ready to attend a meeting today, all to talk all day with no outcome. That's the kind of situation we're saying. It's not fair to us. But we have always indicated a commitment to the process to settle these matters. Call us at the 9th at the 11th hour, we are there. All because we are equally interested, but nobody's interested in our welfare. And the resounding plea coming out of the meeting today is about us going back to school. They're not interested in anything else, but just going back to school. And that cannot be entertained. You're dealing with educators who understand what must happen and how it must happen.
So there's another meeting scheduled for tomorrow. And what is on that agenda?
Well, the meeting is expected to arrive at an agreement for resumption. And I think because of the short notice given for the meeting, both sides showed up not being fully prepared for what was about to happen. So I figure tomorrow there may be some new conditions put on the table. And then again, those will need to be fleshed out. So I don't know how that will happen, whether we are going to have any conclusion tomorrow also. It's left to be seen.
But do you think going into a meeting blindly, not knowing what to be discussed, is a disadvantage on your part?
It's a disadvantage on both sides because we were invited to a meeting for conciliation. And the meeting called by the chief labor officer was for us to have conciliation because the ministry wants conciliation. Going into the meeting for conciliation was for the two sides to agree on the terms for these conciliations. But resoundingly, there was only a cry for us going back to school. And that is why I said we were unprepared for that, because going back to school has to deal with certain conditions, right? And those conditions have been shared, and additional ones will be brought on the table tomorrow as well.
I have not seen this, or I don't know if it was mentioned by you or any other member of the union. What percentage you're asking for 2019, 2020, 2021, and all the years? Percent increase.
So the proposal has 25% for 2019 and 20% for the subsequent years. But like I said, these are just proposals. And I've seen some people saying, oh, the union is unreasonable asking for 25%. You negotiate. You propose, and the two sides reach, and they negotiate. So you could ask for 1,000,000%. When you go there, you negotiate. But if you never come to negotiate, we can't move from the figures on that paper that we have submitted in the form of our proposal.
What is your bottom line of acceptance, percentage-wise? The government say we'll give you 10%.
Now, we've asked for 25% for 2019, and I don't believe anything less than double figures would be sufficient. I don't want to say it out here.
But you vote, whatever the government propose, it's within your right to put it to the members of the union, the teachers, to vote on it. Am I right?
Right. But
if the government makes
an
an offer
on a broadcast like this tonight to say, well, we asking and we accept this percent. But we've spoken and we said it has to be double digit.
If the government offered you 10%, you're not going to put it to the members for a vote?
Yeah, whatever they, and that is what they have not done. They have not come with a counter proposal. So there's nothing we can take to the members. Whatever they bring to us, we will have to get the consent of our members before we accept. So if they bring 10%, the members would have to know, and then of course a decision is taken on whether we accept or not.
Okay, so you're looking at 25% for 2019 and 20% for the rest of the years. I don't know. That's, as you said, that's negotiable. And it's only fair for the government to sit down and negotiate, hammer out all the pros and cons. But there's something else the government is saying, though, that they've granted a lot of opportunities to students who wants to go to the pilot training college to study. They give them time out from the teaching and they're being paid and so forth. How is that?
Well, that's what they're saying, that they've given scholarships and they've given teachers an opportunity to go to the university and college with salary. That is something the government has rolled out, and they have to take responsibility for that. But I believe equally important would be for us to have a livable salary. So that the government has taken an initiative to give so many thousands of scholarships. That should not impede on what it takes to have a teacher live in Guyana. So while that may be something they have done, I have not examined it to see to what extent it is, but I've heard that kind of reasoning. I still believe there must be a commitment to look at what it takes for a teacher to live. Because you might be going to college, but you can't live. How are you going to survive? What kind of teachers are we producing who can't live on a salary?
I know. I just got another question here. I don't know if I should ask it. Someone told me they were making $105,000 a month in Guyana teaching, and they left last year and went to the Bahamas, and they're making $207,000 a month. And that $207,000 a month is in US dollars. How is that?
The starting salary in the Bahamas is about 16,000 US a month from some of my colleagues
Yeah.
About 16,000 you make as a startup teacher in the Bahamas. So that might
So,
not
but
be,
this person tell me they had 8 years experience in Guyana teaching.
it could be true, yeah. Some of my Bahamian friends will tell us they have a lot of Guyanese teachers in Bahamas. I myself have a
Yeah, that's
batchmate over there, and many years ago, she told me that when she left Guyana in 2008, she started receiving 16,000 US dollars a month. So there are other countries that are paying their teachers well, and they're even pulling away from other places. A lot of Guyanese in the Bahamas, a lot of Guyanese in Grenada, in other places like
St. Lucia
St.
as well. I know,
Lucia,
and Antigua.
you know,
I have a lot of
lots
them.
of Guyanese. And now they're
Jamaica
going
also got
to the
Chinese
UK.
teachers.
They're going to the UK. So that is why I said
So go
if we're
ahead.
not careful, we will lose a lot of teachers, thousands of teachers in September. Thousands.
So you're saying that if the government agrees to arbitration, the teachers will go back to work.
Yes, if they agree. But the arbitration period has got to be stipulated. I think one of the major bugbear right now is the period. Government is not prepared to negotiate the period for which we have made our proposal. I think that's the real major issue, right? And I don't know what rationale is being used um, to justify them not wanting to negotiate a particular period. Just to say that there's no physical space in the budget is not enough, because we have seen in the past government went back to parliament for additional funds to supplementary budgets for other things. So they have the capacity to go back and do that if there's a will. But just to say that
So you're
it's not,
telling,
go ahead.
You go ahead.
But just to say that it can't happen when it has been done already on several occasions, we can't buy that.
So you're telling our listeners tonight that if there's no arbitration, if there's no agreement for an arbitration period signed, and the teachers will remain on strike indefinitely.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
That's very, very bold of you. Uh, have you been able to try to negotiate with the Ministry of Education of itself, outside of the chief negotiator, the chief labor officer, about the conditions that you want to stipulate for the teachers going back to work?
No, there hasn't been any talk with the Ministry of Education in itself. Like I said, 3 weeks after the ruling of the High Court, there has been no talk in terms of between the Ministry of Education and the union on salary matters until the union wrote saying we're resuming strike. Then is when the ministry got into action. So no, there hasn't been.
And although Justice Kissoon ruled that the union strike was validated and no salary should be deducted, you're telling me and telling our listeners that the government still not deducting the union dues from the
No, they're not.
teachers' salary.
At this present time, they are not.
Okay, what led to the breakdown after the agreement was to go back to work and you already negotiate? Is because the government don't want to negotiate salaries?
The government do not want to negotiate the period for which the proposal was submitted. They want to negotiate 2024 and forward. That means 2024, 2025. They don't want to negotiate the period for which our proposal was submitted.
But you did not know this before the teachers went back on strike?
Before they went back.
Yeah, that the government
You're
could
asking
not.
me what led. You're asking me what led to the breakdown after
Yeah,
the court mediation. That was the breakdown. The ministry saying at the second meeting we can't negotiate anything from 2019, 2023. We can negotiate 2024 and onward. So that led to the breakdown of those talks. And it also led to the resumption because after the court judgment was given, we would have expected that the ministry and by extension the government to reach out to us to say, look, court has ruled the strike is legitimate. Rather than you go back on strike because your salary cannot be cut, let's talk about this thing and see if we can have a fresh start. They have not done that until the union signaled that there will be a resumption.
Dr. Light, we're coming to the end of the program. One last question before I ask you for your closing remarks. How do you feel about the strike? Knowing that children are the ones that will be most affected.
As an educator, it's very hard. Seeing children who ought to be at school, not at school, and seeing teachers who ought to be at school on the streets. That's a very hard thing for me, being an educator for over 30 years. And the only thing that I believe that needs to be done to rectify this problem is for both sides to come to an agreement on the way forward. I think holding out on the government's part, holding out that they will not negotiate the period, that position has got to change. And then we look at the period as we can flesh out what years we're going to look at within that period. We've said this over and over again. So it saddens me to see that we are at this juncture after a couple of weeks back in the school system. And, it saddens me to know that the ones who are going to lose out are the children of poor families. And as a union leader, to know that my teachers are eager to return to school, but cannot because of the way they are treated. That's hard also.
Are you prepared to extend an olive branch to the government? And if so, what it is?
An olive branch?
To the government. And if so, what it is?
An olive branch to the government?
Yeah.
Well, the olive branch has always been to extend to the government our willingness on our part to engage. And like I said, the union is ready. We are ready to talk around the period, and we're ready to, if possible, compromise on some of the positions that we have taken. But it has to be within the context of the period for which we have submitted a proposal. We've always been willing to engage, whether it's central government or Ministry of Education. But we haven't seen the same courtesy reached out to us. We've been called all manner of names in the general public. But, comes with the territory. We remain committed to the Guyanese education sector and our learners and education. But the conditions are just not right for us to continue the way we have been. Nowhere in the world would you see teachers being treated the way Guyanese teachers are treated at this time.
Dr. Light, I must tell you, thanks for coming on the program. I will say that you're very, very bold and brave to call a strike within 2 strikes within a matter of 5 months in Guyana, never heard of before. What are your closing remarks?
Well, I would just like to say to the teachers of Guyana and First of all, let me speak to the teachers that the union recognizes your sacrifice and is committed to ensure that you're given a livable salary. To the learners, we have proven that even while we are on strike, we have you at heart. We proved this when we went back to school and we completed your work in preparation for you to get to write your examination and assessment. To the parents, we have a commitment to learning in Guyana, and we want you to know that your children are special. And this is not against you and your children, but we have got to take this stand because we are affected with our salaries. And I want to also thank you, Dr. Rose, for always inviting me to be part of the program, and to your listening audience for ensuring that issues affecting the Guyanese teachers are aired. I want you to know that all of us are committed to a better Guyana. And a better Guyana means people got to be able to live. And that is all we're asking. And I want to appeal to you, to your forum, your platform, and your connection and your television's connection to reach out to the government of the day in Guyana and let them know it would make sense to engage the teachers union for an amicable resolution to this standoff at this moment. As you mentioned, the first time in the history of Guyana that we've had two back-to-back strike action in the same year. And, you know,
within the first 5 months.
I didn't even realize that it was historic in nature, but, you know, I believe that we have it in us to fix this, and we should not wait for another day to fix it. We need to fix it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Light, and thanks to all our listeners and viewers for listening to us tonight. It's been a very educational program. Thanks to Noir Singh again for making this program available, and to Devin Bissoon and Ryan Kissoon. And again, thanks to our sponsors for making this program available. Without you, we will not be able to broadcast live. So Dr. Light shed some light on the teachers' strike, and from what I gathered is that this might be a prolonged strike if the government does not want to come to the bargaining table. I'm appealing to all to be reasonable for the children's sake in Guyana. The children are the ones who will be suffering from this strike. I'm not here to blame the union or to blame the government. I'm saying both parties, it takes two to tango. Both parties will have to come and try to end this impasse. It can't continue like this. It's no good for no one. So once again, thanks to you, Dr. Light. And if there's anything else, I'll probably get you back on the program. But so far, I hope that before the end of this week, a resolution can be found to end this impasse, especially for those children who have to write promotional exams to go into new higher classes or higher standards or higher grades. They are the ones that should be under consideration from both parties. And as you said, you are giving them consideration, but you cannot do it by yourself. The old saying, one hand cannot clap, is true. It takes both hands to clap. So I'm hoping that good sense prevail, common sense prevail, and a compromise can be reached as soon as possible. So thanks to all our listeners again, and thanks to you, Dr. White.